Welcome to a Vampiro Productions video. I don't think people understand just how wild the world of First Amendment auditors can get. Tonight, let's talk about a group of people who have turned the simple act of holding up a phone into a full-blown constitutional crusade. I'm talking about First Amendment auditors. These are the folks you see on YouTube, striding into police stations and post offices, camera rolling, determined to film in public spaces to, in their words, test whether public officials respect their rights. They are, depending on who you ask, either the last line of defense against a creeping police state, or the internet's most self-righteous hall monitors. And frankly, the line between those two can be thinner than a supermodel's patience at a pie-eating contest. The central question here is a spicy meatball of a debate. Are these auditors noble citizen journalists holding the powerful accountable, or are they provocateurs chasing YouTube ad revenue by goading public servants into viral meltdowns? It's a conflict that pits the fundamental right to document our government against the practical need for police to do their jobs without someone narrating their every move like it's a David Attenborough documentary. It's a clash of principles, a clash of personalities, and quite often, a clash that ends with someone in handcuffs, screaming about torts. Nowhere was this clash more visceral, more moist, than in the now infamous encounter between the auditor known as Long Island Audit and Connecticut State Police Sergeant Troy Foley. This incident, which ended with an alleged act of police expectoration, wasn't just a confrontation, it was a perfect, messy microcosm of this entire phenomenon. It's got everything: a determined auditor, an exasperated cop, a legal gray area, and a moment of conflict so raw it makes you question everything. So let's dive into that petri dish of public outrage and see what grows. So, let's start with the best-case scenario, the auditor's entire raison d'etre: increased police accountability. The fundamental idea is that a police officer is less likely to engage in, let's call it creative enforcement of the law, if they know their every action is being immortalized on a 4K video that will be uploaded to the internet before their shift even ends. It's the same principle as your boss walking by your desk. Suddenly you're not scrolling through cat memes, you're the most diligent employee in history. The camera acts as a silent, unblinking supervisor, a digital chaperone for the powerful. And when you see videos of officers calmly explaining procedures or de-escalating a situation, you can argue the system is working. Think of it like this. For decades, the only record of a police interaction was the officer's own report. That's like having a fox write the definitive history of the hen house. It's probably going to be a little biased. Auditors introduce a second, independent record. It's a check, a balance, a way of ensuring that the official narrative isn't the only narrative. When an officer knows their actions will be scrutinized not just by their superiors, but by a jury of millions on YouTube, their calculus changes. The potential for a casual abuse of power to become a career-ending viral video is a powerful, and some would say necessary, deterrent in a world where official oversight can sometimes feel, let's say, lacking. Beyond just keeping cops on their best behavior, there's another, arguably just as important function: these videos serve public education. Let's be honest, most of us have a grasp of our constitutional rights that is, at best, cobbled together from episodes of Law and Order. We know we have the right to remain silent, mostly because a stern-faced detective has said it on TV 1,000 times. But what about the nuances? The right to film in a public lobby, the difference between a consensual encounter and being detained, the specific words you need to say to invoke your rights. It's not exactly taught in most high schools. This is where auditors, for all their faults, provide a genuine public service. Their videos are essentially real-world seminars in constitutional law. When an auditor calmly asserts their right to film and an officer incorrectly tells them they can't, that's a teachable moment for millions of viewers. They are stress-testing the Constitution in the wild and broadcasting the results. People watch these encounters and learn, oh, so that's what I can do, or, ah, so that's an unlawful order. They are, in effect, crowdsourcing a civic education that the state has largely failed to provide, turning every post office and DMV into a potential classroom for the Bill of Rights. Now let's talk about deterrence, which is subtly different from accountability. Accountability is what happens after something goes wrong. Deterrence is about preventing that something from happening in the first place. The theory here is that the mere presence of a camera, the knowledge that an auditor could be around any corner, might just be enough to make an officer think twice before crossing a line. It's the scarecrow in the field. It might not be a real person, but the crows don't know that for sure, and they tend to stay away from the corn just in case. This is the proactive argument for auditing. It's not just about catching bad cops. It's about creating an environment where bad policing is less likely to fester. If an officer with a history of, say, being a bit too hands-on knows that any member of the public could be the next viral YouTuber, they might just decide to keep their hands to themselves. It introduces a variable of uncertainty for officers who might otherwise feel they can act with impunity. It's a form of psychological pressure, an invisible but ever-present check on behavior that formal systems of oversight, with all their bureaucracy and internal loyalties, might miss. The camera becomes a silent partner in the social contract. So, this all ties into a broader and honestly incredibly important concept: transparency. In a democracy, the government is supposed to work for us, the people. And part of that deal is that we should be able to see how it's working. Law enforcement, by its very nature, is one of the most powerful and intrusive arms of the state. They can detain you, arrest you, and use force against you. Given that immense power, the argument for maximum transparency is, well, incredibly compelling. We wouldn't accept the IRS auditing our taxes in secret, so why should we accept public-facing police work happening behind a veil? First Amendment auditors, in their own abrasive way, are champions of this principle. They walk into the public areas of government buildings and insist on the people's right to see what is being done in their name with their tax dollars. When they film a clerk at the DMV or an officer at a front desk, they are reinforcing the idea that these spaces belong to the public. They are, quite literally, shining a light into the corners of government. This push for openness can lead to better policies, improved training, and a general culture shift within law enforcement from one of secrecy to one of public service. It's a practical application of the idea that governments are healthier when they can't hide. There's a ripple effect to these videos that goes way beyond just the specific interaction being filmed. It's about citizen empowerment. When a person watches a video of an auditor successfully and calmly standing up for their rights against an overbearing official, it can be incredibly inspiring. It demystifies the process. It shows them that they don't have to be a lawyer or a politician to hold their government accountable. All they need is a phone, a bit of knowledge, and the courage to stand their ground. It's a powerful message. You, the individual, have power. This can create a virtuous cycle. One person sees an audit video, learns their rights, and feels empowered to film their own police interaction. That video then inspires others. It's a grassroots movement fueled by YouTube views. It encourages people to be more engaged, more aware, and less willing to be passive subjects of state authority. It transforms them from spectators into active participants in the democratic process. In a world where so many people feel powerless against large, faceless institutions, the First Amendment auditor provides a template for how a single person can, quite literally, speak truth to power, or at the very least, film truth in the face of power. Alright, let's flip the coin. Because for every argument that auditors are noble crusaders, there's a counter-argument that they are, to put it mildly, professional antagonists. And the number one exhibit for the prosecution is the potential for escalation. Police work is often tense, stressful, and involves dealing with people on the worst day of their lives. Now just imagine doing that job while someone stands 6 feet away, shoving a camera in your face, and providing a running commentary like a particularly smug golf announcer. It's not exactly a recipe for de-escalation. Many auditors adopt a deliberately confrontational style. They refuse to identify themselves even when it might smooth things over. They get needlessly pedantic about the law, and honestly they seem to relish getting a rise out of officers. Instead of being a fly on the wall, they become the main character in a drama of their own creation. This can take a routine, manageable situation and turn it into a powder keg. An officer who might have been calm can become agitated and defensive. A simple inquiry can spiral into a heated argument, an arrest, and a use of force that might never have happened if the auditor hadn't been there, actively fanning the flames. Beyond just raising the temperature, there's a very practical concern here. Auditors can actively disrupt and interfere with police work. While filming from a safe distance is, one thing, some auditors really push the boundaries, getting too close to active investigations, crime scenes, or traffic stops. They might ignore police perimeters or refuse to follow lawful orders to move back, claiming their right to film trumps all other considerations. This isn't just annoying, it can actually be dangerous. It can distract officers at critical moments, potentially contaminate a crime scene, or even compromise the safety of officers, victims, or the public. Imagine police are responding to a domestic violence call. It's a volatile, unpredictable situation. The last thing they need is to divide their attention between the potential threat inside the house and the person on the sidewalk live streaming their every move and demanding to know their badge number. Or, consider a traffic stop on a busy highway. An auditor getting too close doesn't just distract the officer, they put themselves and others at risk. Police have a legitimate and legally supported need to control a scene for safety and investigative integrity. When an auditor's insistence on their right to be right there interferes with that, they cross the line from holding power accountable to actively obstructing it. And now we come to the big cynical elephant in the room: money. While a lot of auditors claim their motives are, purely ideological, it's honestly impossible to ignore the fact that for some, this is a business. A particularly dramatic or confrontational video can rack up millions of views on YouTube, and, well, millions of views mean thousands of dollars in ad revenue. And that's before we even get to things like GoFundMe pages, Patreon subscriptions, and those, lucrative settlements from lawsuits filed against police departments. Suddenly a constitutional crusade starts to look a lot like a career path. This profit motive, it really changes the calculus. If your income depends on creating dramatic content, are you more likely to seek out calm, professional interactions, or are you actually incentivized to provoke a conflict? The most boring audit video is one where the auditor walks in, films for 5 minutes, and the officer just says, "Have a nice day, sir." That video gets no clicks. The video that goes viral is the one with shouting, handcuffs, and a lawsuit. So this creates a perverse incentive to escalate, to be as obnoxious as possible because, well, conflict pays the bills. It taints the entire enterprise, making it really hard to tell who is a genuine activist and who is just a rage-baiting entrepreneur with a camera. Let's also consider the impact on everyone else, the regular people just trying to go about their day. When an auditor starts a confrontation in a post office lobby, they aren't just interacting with the government employee. They're creating a scene that affects every single person in that room. The person trying to mail a package to their sick grandmother, the senior citizen trying to ask a question about their pension, the parent trying to keep their kids calm. They all become unwilling extras in the auditor's YouTube drama. To these people, the auditor isn't a hero of the First Amendment, they're a public nuisance. They're the person who holds up the line, who makes a simple errand stressful and unpleasant, who turns a public space into their personal film set. This is where the auditor's absolutist stance on their rights can, really clash with the public's general desire for peace and order. While the auditor may be technically within their rights to film, that doesn't stop them from being, for lack of a better word, a massive jerk. And when the public's primary experience with auditing is being inconvenienced by it, it erodes support for the entire movement. Finally, there's the crucial issue of misrepresentation. The video we see on YouTube is not objective reality. It's a narrative crafted by the auditor. They control the camera, they control the edit, and they control the title and description that frame the entire interaction for the viewer. They can choose to start recording only when the officer is already frustrated. They can edit out moments where they themselves were being unreasonable. They can use dramatic music and clickbait titles like "Tyrant Cop Assaults Me" to paint a picture that might not be entirely accurate. This isn't to say all auditors do this, but the potential for manipulation is, honestly, huge. We are only ever seeing one side of the story, literally. The officer doesn't get to submit their own B-roll. The context of what happened before the camera started rolling is often missing. A 10-minute video might be cut from an hour-long interaction. This selective presentation can easily mislead viewers, who then form a strong opinion based on incomplete or biased information. The camera, which is supposed to be a tool for objective truth, can just as easily become a tool for propaganda, confirming the biases of an audience primed to see police as villains. So, after all that, where do we land on First Amendment auditors? Should they be allowed to continue their often annoying, sometimes important work? The answer, as unsatisfying as it is, has to be yes. The right to film our government in public is a cornerstone of a free society, and honestly, we can't start carving out exceptions just because some of its practitioners are profoundly irritating. Banning them would be a cure far, far worse than the disease, creating a precedent that could be used to silence legitimate journalists and whistleblowers. The principle is simply too important to sacrifice on the altar of convenience or politeness. Which brings us back to Sergeant Faley and Long Island Audit. Was the auditor justified in being there, filming and refusing to give his name? Absolutely, that's the law. Was Sergeant Faley justified in getting frustrated? As a human, maybe. As a professional police officer, absolutely not. And was he right to, allegedly, spit at the auditor? Of course not. That's not just unprofessional, it's assault. It was a moment where the worst tendencies of both sides collided. The auditor's penchant for provocation met the officer's failure to maintain professional composure, resulting in a truly ugly spectacle that served no one. Ultimately, auditors are a messy, imperfect, and often infuriating response to a real problem, a lack of consistent police accountability and transparency. They are a symptom, not the disease itself. The path forward isn't to ban auditors, but to make them obsolete. This happens through better police training and de-escalation and constitutional rights, robust and truly independent civilian oversight, and a culture shift where transparency is the default, not something that has to be extracted under duress by a guy with a GoPro and a persecution complex. Until then, auditors will remain a necessary, if often headache-inducing, feature of our civic landscape. Good night. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to Vampiro Productions for more content.